Open daily from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. with a full menu available until midnight. Takeout orders also are welcome. Learn more at nightingalempls.com. Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
Broadcasting live, not from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Streaming live right now on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/at The Gaily Show. This is The Gaily Show. I'm John Parker. Jim and I, we're at home today because Minnesota snowstorm.
I'm broadcasting live from the dining room.
It is. I know it seems ridiculous to complain about a snowstorm in Minnesota in March, but I'm complaining.
That doesn't stop you.
No, it really doesn't stop me. Thankfully, we've got Brett Johnson in the control room at the studio who's making sure everything is going swimmingly. Hey, Brett.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good.
How were the roads when you were out there?
They're starting to get cleared up. Yeah, they could be better. It's March. What can you expect?
Yeah. I know. Well, what can you expect on the show today? Christopher Kane will join us in the second half hour of the show. He is the White House correspondent for the Washington Blade. As you can imagine, there is a lot to break down, especially from last night. Executives are already saying that they're going to pass along the tariff costs to you, the consumer. The Department of Justice is warning that they're going to sue Minnesota. Keith Ellison is saying back off. But first, updates in the murder of Sam Nordquist. So Sam, black trans man from Minnesota, went out to New York State to be with a partner or to meet with a potential partner last fall, never came home. Police are releasing allegations that are... my jaw dropped. They are deranged. If they are found to be true, I don't even know what the appropriate length of jail time is going to be correct here. They are saying that Sam was subjected to weeks of torture that included sexual assault and pouring bleach on him. His body was found wrapped in plastic and dumped in a field in the Finger Lakes region. They had previously been arrested for the group, which is 7 people were arrested for second-degree murder and also accused of kidnapping and child endangerment. There are 11 counts total in the indictment. Weirdly, the police are continuing to say that there is no evidence of a hate crime. They're saying that the assailants are identifying as LGBTQ+, and that one of them lived with Nordquist. I don't understand what that has to do with anything about defining a hate crime, at least not when I looked it up to New York's version of it. The identities of a person do not preclude them from committing a hate crime. But the Ontario County Assistant District Attorney, Kelly Wolford, according to the Associated Press, is saying that Sam was treated like, quote, a dog in the month before his death, that he was beaten, assaulted, sexually abused, starved, and held captive. One defendant, Precious Arzuaga, was charged with coercing 2 children, aged 7 and 12, to take part in all of this. That's according to the indictment, AP News reporting. 6 other people were charged: Patrick Goodwin, Kyle Sage, Jennifer Quiano, Emily Modica, Kimberly Sosha, and Thomas Eves. There currently isn't an arraignment date. I just don't even know. I don't even. This is so disturbing on so many levels. And I know that it's hard to hear, but Sam was our neighbor, our family member, our friend here in Minnesota. So many people knew and loved him, and the fact that this has happened to him and how this happened is unconscionable. We will continue to bring updates as they are made available on this story. because we need to be aware of what's happening in this case. There's no good way to transition to our next story from that, considering how disturbing it was. But CNBC is reporting on a survey of 4,000 executives that half of them are willing to pass up to 2/3 of the added cost from tariffs onto their own consumers. Almost 30% said that they were willing to pass 90% of the costs of the tariffs onto consumers. The economists are telling the CNBC that there will be a notable shock on the U.S. gross domestic product. And Target CEO Brian Cornell is already saying that tariffs on Mexican goods will lead to higher prices on produce. I think what I've been seeing here, and Jim, I'll be curious your thoughts on this, is that the tariffs, some being targeted, some being blanket, some already being removed. They removed the automobile-related tariffs today, a day after they put them in. Is creating a problem for companies, at least according to this reporting from the CNBC, where they're like not knowing what to do, and that they may end up just keeping prices preemptively higher or raise costs on a gradation to deal with potential tariffs coming down the pike. So weirdly, we may end up having higher prices because of tariffs, even if the tariffs aren't in place.
Right. Well, this is basic. I've said this before. Basic economics. I don't know that anyone in the Trump administration has taken an economics class, but anyone who has taken an economics class knows that this is bad fiscal policy. There's no way to tiptoe around it. There's no way to explain it some other way. I was astonished that the representative from Michigan who said that the president showed what a great vision he had for the country. Obviously, she's never taken an economics class either. And so to cause all of this turmoil in the markets, and the markets are going to respond, and the economy is going to fall more dramatically than we realize, because when you put amateurs in charge of things that are important, like economics, you're going to have a terrible outcome. And we're about to have two bumper cars slamming into each other, all of it avoidable, all of it unnecessary, all of it because this dimwit thought, well, this is how I'm going to pay for giving money to my rich friends, is through tariffs. And I think a lot of people did say, Mr. President, this is a bad idea. And nobody was willing to throw themselves on the tarmac and be run over by this jerk. And so now he's going to bring us all onto the brink of a possible depression, which we have not lived through since the 1920s. I've never lived through one. Have any of you? No, but we're going to go through one now.
Well, arguably,
unnecessarily.
Arguably, there was the Great Depression in 2008, but nobody wanted to call it that. Even
of George Bush II, yes, another incompetent, another incapable person.
The Dow Jones has rebounded 606 points, seeing that also on CNBC, breaking because of the removal of the tariffs on automakers. But it had gone down 1,300 points since Monday.
But more importantly, they had a list of hundreds of buildings, of federal buildings that they're talking about selling. This is all the guy knows is buildings. He's a construction person. That's all. And he's not very good at that. But he has some knowledge of real estate, commercial real estate. He's had experience in it. He's been a terrible business person, but he's going to take all these federal buildings. He must be so excited to look at all these federal buildings that he thinks he's going to sell and liquidate. They just announced today they're going to lay off 70,000 people from Veterans Affairs. If you're a veteran and you voted for a Republican, you should just jump off your balcony, because
Jim,
you just did something terrible for veterans. If you care about veterans, you couldn't have done a worse thing for veterans if you love them or respect them than voting Republican? And how many veterans voted for this guy and other Republicans? I can't even imagine how many of them are saying, what did I just do? Well, you're going to see what you just did. And welcome to it.
Well, there are a lot of folks. The instability in the market is going to affect IRAs. And so folks who were, Xers who were thinking that they were going to retire are suddenly going to find their IRAs taking a little dip here.
Retirement in a depression like this guy is creating, retirement might become a concept that is no longer a practical thing. We may not be able.
Well, they've said they don't want it to be retirement. There's MAGA folks saying that there should be no retirement.
Yeah, no, just work until you die.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's their idea of the new world order. I don't subscribe to that. I'm going to try to not give in to that. But that's what the Republicans want you to do: work, then die. And I hope that people wake up and say, oh, is there an alternative to that? Maybe the Democrats would be a better alternative to that. Maybe work and have some sort of dignified retirement. That would be my vote anyway.
Well, it's interesting seeing all these videos from the Republican town halls, and AP News reporting today that Mike Johnson is telling people not to have town halls anymore.
Don't talk to the people.
Don't talk to your people that elected you, because all these Republicans are actually pissed off. The thing that I don't understand, though, about all these people yelling at Republican MAGA Congress members is, are they upset with a particular policy, or are they realizing, oh, wait, this is who this candidate, this president, this movement actually is? And the thing that I'm a little reticent for all of the, Democrats and lefties on Blue Sky, which is the only social media network I'm on, crowing, saying, hey, look, the MAGA Republicans are finally, realizing who they voted for. And I'm like, are they, or are they just upset about one particular thing and they're on board with everything else? And so that's something that I, hope that journalists will continue to look into here, because I don't think we've quite gotten there yet. But, when IRAs start going down and your electricity costs start going up, which would be for the Midwest, gas prices start going up, which would be felt immediately in New England. This is based on reporting that we talked about yesterday. What I mean about the Midwest is that, they're talking about prices going up for us first, because we get electricity from Canada. We are going to take a short break here, come back and talk about the Department of Justice claiming they're going to sue Minnesota, but Keith Ellison saying not so fast. Short break, more on the Gaily Show to come.
Hey, it's Tom. Minnesotans take pride in protecting their lakes, trees, and natural beauty. And now you have a chance to do even more. The state is committed to 100% renewable energy by 2040. And by switching to all energy solar, you can help make that goal a reality. Solar works in Minnesota year-round. Now is the time to act. Some federal rebates could disappear with changes in the federal government, so don't wait and miss out. All Energy Solar was named Minnesota's Best Gold winner in 2024 and recognized as a top solar contractor by Solar Power World.
Come out and learn more from our trusted team at All Energy Solar this weekend at the Everything Spring Expo in Eden Prairie, March 8th, and the Mac Groveland Home Improvement Fair, also on March 8th. Discover solar energy solutions from a trusted name.
The future is renewable. The choice is yours. Stop paying the utility company and start producing your own clean energy with All Energy Solar. Get a free consultation today at allenergysolar.com.
This is Robert Pilot of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, weekdays at 5 p.m. On our show, you'll hear about Native issues like treaties, protecting Mother Earth, and holding our elected officials accountable. Weekly correspondents like Dr. Stately, State Senator Mary Kunesh, Robert Lilligren, and Bob Blake update us with the latest news from Turtle Island. Native issues are human issues, and human issues are Native issues. Listen weekdays at 5 p.m. or watch the show on Native Roots Radio social media accounts. Ho-wah!
Hey everyone, this is longtime AM 950 host Ellie Krug. I'm thrilled to announce my brand new show, The Illegal Trans Woman, which takes advocacy for my community, transgender and gender variant people, up several big notches. The Illegal Trans Woman will feature interviews, commentary, and information aimed at pushing back against efforts to oppress trans and gender variant humans. Please tune in on Saturdays at 4 or wherever you go to get your podcasts. And do me a favor, share about the show. Thanks.
Join us April 10 through 12 at the Capital Readiness Summit, where we're bridging the gap between investors, support organizations, and the entrepreneur community. In just 2 days, you'll make connections that could take you years to build. With over 180 degrees of networking power, this is your chance to meet people you've been looking for. But hurry, the summit sells out every year. Register now at www.connectupmn.org. That's connectupmn.org. Follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn for updates and discount codes. If you're an entrepreneur and investor, you don't want to miss this event of the year.
In a galaxy not so far away, the battle for truth rages on. Smart Wars is a solo exhibition by Rory Wakeup, a Minnesota Chippewa artist who flips the script on Star Wars using humor and regalia. Wake 'em Up challenges colonial narratives and reclaims indigenous values of balance, resilience, and environmental activism. This exhibition runs February 27th through April 5th at All My Relations Arts in Minneapolis. More information at allmyrelationsarts.org.
Welcome back to the Gaily Show. I am your host, John Parker. It is 21 minutes past the hour. Just catching up to this story that happened last week, where the U.S. Justice Department says it is going to sue Minnesota and 2 other states, Maine and California, for defying the executive order banning trans girls and women from competing in sports consistent with their gender identity, quote unquote. The Attorney General, Pam Bondi, sent letters to Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, as well as to Eric Martins, who is the director of the Minnesota State High School League, saying that, quote, Minnesota should be on notice. Democratic governor of Maine, Janet Mills, and the executive director of the California Interscholastic Federation, Ron Nochetti, also received warnings similar to what we got here in Minnesota. There was some great video from last Friday at the National Governors Association. This I did see, where Trump was trying to call out Governor Mills, and she just was like, see you in court. Ellison is saying that the ban will violate the Minnesota Human Rights Act, and that we don't, because of that act, Minnesota does not need to comply with his executive order. And something that I appreciate from Christopher Kane and from Outfront Minnesota and from Gender Justice, an executive order is not a law. It is an executive order. It is not binding and incumbent upon states to follow it. And
That's right.
so it'll be interesting. The Department of Education announced that it is launching a Title IX investigation into the league here in Minnesota and its California counterpart, the league being the Minnesota State High School League, who has refused to comply with the executive order. Ellison, writing back to Bondi, Title IX does not authorize the president to issue directives with the force of law,
Right.
and therefore does not supersede Minnesota law. Of course, our delightful Speaker of the House, Lisa DeMuth, has said that we should all comply with the president's executive order. Yeah.
You know what I call Lisa DeMuth, and I won't say it on the air, but this is a party, the Republicans, who have been harping about states' rights for so long, and Donald Trump about the abortion issue, which I call women's health care, has been saying it should be up to the states. Now, you cannot, in one issue and for one instance, say it should be up to the states, and in another issue say with any sort of legitimacy, oh, now this is something that the federal government, now the federal government supersedes. You have to believe something or you don't believe something. Otherwise, we all know what that means. You're just cheating. You're just cheating to get by this issue, to get on to the next issue. Now, Pam Bondi, I want to point this out. Ms. Bondi got her bachelor's degree. Good for her. Congratulations. Education usually helps people. And then 12 years later, she got her JD and from Stetson College in Florida. And Mr. Trump named her to the Anti-Christian Bias Task Force. Now, for my money, that's all I need to hear. First of all, that there is an anti-Christian bias task force is embarrassing. And it is also embarrassing to think for a moment that somehow the dominant religion in the United States, in a country that has no state religion, has a separation between church and state, that Ms. Bondi is on the anti-Christian bias task force. So frankly, anything that comes out of her mouth, I just have to swallow hard, because already she's aligned herself with an extreme and frankly dying portion of the community, which is organized religion. You know my feelings about this, John. Organized religion is fine for people, but it doesn't have anything to do with governing or laws. Okay. It's its own thing. It's a personal choice which everybody is entitled to make, but it has no business in government. And that's why we don't have an official state religion, and thank goodness that we don't. So Pam really needs to go be somewhere where she can espouse her religious points of view, but the Attorney General's office is not it.
Well, it was the Attorney General of Florida, where, obviously got a lot of practice in enforcing draconian LGBTQ laws. I think it was interesting that Charlie Baker, and this is, I'm being reminded of this through this WCCO article and CBS News, reporting. Charlie Baker, who is the president of the NCAA, at the end of, in 2024, said that he knew of less than 10 transgender student athletes, and there are more than 530,000, I believe, athletes in the NCAA. But then, of course, capitulated earlier this year, saying that they would do everything they can to comply with the president's executive order. So the idea that we have, Tommy Tuberville going on the news saying that there are, tens of thousands, and it's almost all, quote unquote, men participating in women's sports is such, hogwash. It's so easily disprovable by everybody. And so the fact that they are doing this is just so unconscionable. Speaking of unconscionable, very unconscionable. Again, though, it looks like Keith Ellison, our Attorney General, isn't going to give them an inch, and neither is Governor Mills in not California, in Maine. Yeah, I'm not even quite sure what else to say here, except that to remind folks that an executive order is not law. And I really appreciated Keith Ellison's remarks that he's saying that the president is trying to rule this country via an executive order, and that's not how rule of law works, or the separation of federal powers works here in the United States. So long as we have the United States here. We are coming up on a break, and when we come back from that break, thankfully, we are going to have White House correspondent for the Washington Blade, Christopher Kane, who is going to help us understand, or better understand, what the heck happened last night. I did not watch, for my own mental health, the joint session to Congress, but I read the news this morning, going through all of it, and it was, I don't even understand how you can just sit there and lie that much. And I don't understand why it was only a few people that walked out of there on the Democratic side, and then why it wasn't everybody that walked out, because what is even the point of sitting there listening to lies for an entire, for an entire longest, by the way, I saw that AP News saying it was the longest session speech to Congress by a president. Ugh. Okay. Break here. We will be back with Christopher Kane from the Washington Blade.
Hey, Minnesota, it's Brad Friedman, host of the Bradcast. We'll expose all the latest schemes, frauds, and more. Weeknights at 7 on AM 950.
Located just north of 50th in France, the Great Wall Restaurant has provided a delicious taste of authentic Chinese cuisine since 1981. Specializing in Szechuan and Peking dishes, they offer one of the most extensive menus in the Twin Cities. Favorites include hot and sour soup, pan-fried dumplings, and mushu pork with homemade Chinese pancakes. Stop by their Edina location or call for takeout at 952-927-4439. See the full menu at greatwallrestaurant.us.
Experience a brand new musical bursting with imagination and surprises. In Milo Imagines the World, a wildly creative young boy spends his time on a crowded train car, imagining the lives of the passengers around him, and sees his dreams come to vivid life in the form of vibrant songs and energetic dance numbers, with tunes ranging from pop to hip-hop to country. You won't want to miss this stunning new production that the Chicago Reader called an absolute delight. Milo Imagines the World is on stage at Children's Theater Company through March 9th. Get your tickets today at childrenstheater.org.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Hi, this is Paul Metza, host of the Wall of Power Radio Hour. We have been on the air on AM 950 for 10 years. We feature cool people from all walks of life in all 50 states. We've had musicians, politicians, actors, poets, people with great stories or a tale to tell. Tune in every Saturday night at 6 p.m. on AM 950, and podcasts are available on all streaming services.
Spring and summer is the right time to install your fireplace. Find your perfect fireplace and have it installed and ready before the cold weather hits again. If you already have a wood fireplace, consider a fireplace insert or check out the entire selection at Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces on East Franklin and Riverside in Minneapolis. It will transform your inefficient fireplace into a reliable, environmentally smart heating system.
This is Peter Solak, owner of Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces. Have you ever watched your dog or cat curl up in front of a fire? It's primordial, the way it touches both the animal and the human. We know that fire reaches deep into the heart and soul. Let us show you how. We have over 35 working units on display here in Minneapolis. We are located at the east end of Riverside Avenue at 2901 East Franklin. From I-94, take the Riverside Avenue exit. Find us also online at woodlandstoves.com. Let us help you make a fireplace part of your life.
Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces, out of the ordinary products and services since 1977.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for partly cloudy skies and windy conditions today with a high near 32. Tonight, clear with a low around 16. And Thursday, sunny with a high around 37. Nightingale offers a warm, inviting atmosphere with a full menu of American classics like the famous Nightingale Burger and Fries, Ginger Tamari Chicken Wings, and Duck Pastrami Reuben. They're open daily from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. with a full menu available until midnight. Takeout orders also are welcome. Learn more at nightingalempls.com.
Broadcasting live, not from the studios of AM 950, KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm your host, John Parker. Welcome to the Gaily Show, broadcasting from my home, our home, with Jim Pounds, our executive producer. There was a winter storm out there today, still going on, or at least breezy from what I can see from our window here. It is 33 minutes after the hour. We have the best possible guest joining us right now after last night's joint session. White House correspondent for the Washington Blade, Christopher Kane, is here with us. Christopher, welcome back to the Gaily Show. And what the fork was that last night?
Hi, John. Hi, Jim. It's great to be with you. It was certainly an interesting night. I believe he broke records with the length of that speech last night. 99 minutes, I think.
Yeah. It was wild. Did you watch it?
I did.
Well, he probably has to. We don't have to. We're fortunate to just be commenting on it.
Well, I mean,
every time somebody in my life is watching like a presidential debate or a State of the Union, I'm always like, what are you doing? You're not obligated to be doing this. Put yourself through this.
I used to be a long time ago. I used to enjoy these things, and now I'm like, I can't even stomach it. There were a lot of attacks on the queer community, specifically the trans community, last night.
Mm-hmm.
GLAD had a lot to say about that.
Yeah, so you may have noticed, I mean, presidents always do this with State of the Union addresses. They invite special guests, like to tee up a point or a theme of the speech, of the address. And so we saw a lot of that last night, including people who were brought on to elucidate and promote some of the anti-trans policies that we've seen so far from this administration. We saw there was a guest who was active with I believe it's called the Independent Women's Forum. This was the volleyball player who apparently was engaged in a match, and one of her opponents was trans and spiked the ball, and she suffered a traumatic brain injury as a result. So she was there. Riley Gaines was also an associate with the Independent Women's Forum, was also there as a guest of a congresswoman from Iowa, I believe. So, and then finally, there was the family of a family based in Florida who alleged that their child was socially transitioned in school without their knowledge or permission, which Glad pointed out appears not to be the case, or at least that framing was quite misleading.
There's interesting reporting about that particular one, where it basically seems like the parents are lying because Freedom of Information Act has revealed emails from the parents to the school verifying that they knew what was going on, asking the school, yes, go along, they're non-binary, use the name, we're going to let our child take the lead on this. So it's weird that there were all these communications multiple times about it, and now suddenly it was a secret and part of a plot to turn all students into to transition everybody.
It's amazing, as you probably recall from the Trump campaign, when he was alleging that students are going to school and then coming home having underwent a medical transition without their parents' knowledge or permission, which, putting aside the let's say implausibility of such a hypothesis, I mean, you have to wonder whether there was a single case in this country of a child who was socially transitioned without their parents' knowledge or permission that they could have found instead of this family.
But
there aren't any. And then there's that NCAA athlete who, this one blows my mind, is that the person finished 5th in a race with a trans athlete, so tied with this trans athlete, but says that they're being whatever. I'm like, there were 3 other people ahead of you. If it was a tie, there were 3 other people ahead of you that were apparently all cisgender women. Were they all just going to lose as well? Like, because you tied somehow, they were also be disqualified or something? I mean, it is the weirdest, the facts of the case, and you're like, why is this a cause celeb?
Absolutely. And you have to wonder too, with this volleyball injury, like how many girls are injured in volleyball matches by other girls? I don't know the answer to that offhand, but it's got to be a non-zero number.
But that is what the media should be reporting on, not what they are reporting on, right? They should give us that perspective, because that would be interesting to know. I don't know that. And was this an anomaly, or does this happen some percentage of the time, and because it's a dangerous sport? I don't know. But I feel like we should learn that, rather than go into this tabloid mentality, which is, oh my God, look at that Martian over there on the front lawn. That doesn't seem like very good reporting to me.
Right. I mean, you can always, and you see this with the immigration stuff as well, with the, another feature of the address last night was the recounting of some very brutal, violent crimes committed by migrants who were here in the United States illegally. And to take that as to use that to support a narrative that that's the way that most immigrants behave when they reach the United States, it's the same kind of idea, right, that you're seeing with the trans stuff.
Right.
Well, and this idea that, which I find in my own community as a dual citizen, that, it's just going to be the folks who are breaking the law that are going to be deported. And that's really naive of you to think that. But if we may turn to some other reporting of yours, Christopher, the Pentagon has announced that they're going to identify trans service members by the end of this month and begin discharging them. Are they able to do that, or are the courts? Do the current injunctions on these policies apply here, or are folks going to have to sue again and get an injunction against this new attack?
So, broadly, I think this is kind of an open question. So, yesterday there was a recent development, last night, I should say. I think it was a federal court in Washington state that issued an order requiring the administration to explain precisely how trans service members would be identified and separated from the military. So the administration is going to have to come up with some answers and some specifics, which if you look at that court challenge as well as the litigation happening in Maryland against this, the exclusion of trans service members, what you'll find is that the administration has taken great pains to not fully explain how it proposes to effectuate this.
Is there a reason why?
It's a good question. I'd rather not put myself in the position of trying to understand their motives, but it's worth asking. It's worth asking.
So I was reading though there are exemptions from this though. Weirdly,
there are exemptions, and I don't remember exactly what they were, but they're very extremely limited. Extremely limited. So they should not be taken to they should not be understood as a way for most trans people to evade a ban. It's going to only apply to a very, very, very small percentage of what is already a very, very small percentage of service members to begin with.
I was going to ask that. Do we know the approximate numbers of trans service members?
So the estimates vary significantly. You'll hear as few as, a 4-digit number, 4,000, 7,000, and as many as up to 15,000. I think most LGBTQ advocacy groups and most advocacy groups that are active in this specific space would tell you it's closer to 14 or 15,000.
Yeah, that's the number I've heard anyway.
Right.
I mean, this feels almost word for word of as I was reading your reporting, Christopher, that it feels Lavender Scare. I mean, almost exactly verbatim again.
Right. I think when you look at the across the federal government at some of the anti-DEI initiatives as well, I think a lot of people are invoking that comparison. That it seems like there is an effort afoot to rid the federal government of trans people, of LGBTQ people, and also to prohibit the government from recognizing their very existence and their identities.
Mm-hmm. And the way that they're denigrating them as well, so as to make it almost impossible for them. I mean, when you're dishonorably discharged, or however they're going to go about doing it, how do you then, get work in the private sector?
Absolutely. It's going to upend people's lives. We're talking about people who in many cases have dedicated their lives and careers to serving this country in the military, and had no plans of leaving before they were apparently forced out.
It's going to be, I know you're following it for us, the court cases. So obviously we're going to be looking forward to seeing what you have for us coming up here, because it's just, it's all coming so hard and so fast now and it's starting to settle in, and it's depressing.
It is. When you talk about the pace of news, right, and like how it's felt like a fire hose the first month and a half of the new administration, I think we can expect things to slow down, and then most of the action that we're going to be seeing is going to happen in federal courtrooms, which is going to take a while to resolve. These cases will be appealed. Who knows what the ultimate outcome is going to be? It's going to be difficult to follow. But these things do ultimately take time to reach a resolution.
Speaking of things that are supposed to be resolved and are not, Republican Michigan Senator Rep. Josh Shriver introduced a resolution Tuesday asking the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn Oberfeld v. Hodges, the Supreme Court case that paved the way for gay marriage in this country. My understanding, though, he's not by himself. There are other states that are doing this as well, correct?
That's true. There are other states. What I would emphasize, though, at the same time, is that there were only a handful of Republican lawmakers in the Michigan legislature who signed on to this, and many of them didn't even join him at the press conference that he gave to introduce this measure. So those who did join, it would appear, did so reluctantly.
Because this guy, I mean, I guess here's the thing the question I have about that, because you were reporting that he has been stripped of all of his committee assignments. So is it because of he's just this, person who is whatever, or is it because they're sort of half-hearted on board with his resolution?
Ooh, to tell you the truth, and forgive me, it's been a while since I wrote this piece. I don't remember exactly what the circumstances were that caused him to lose his committee assignments, but I believe that happened recently, whether it was the most recent legislative session. I can't remember exactly.
I'll bet he's got a relative somewhere in his past, and that's what's really fueling it. I'm just speculating, but it's usually true.
Well, the reason why I wanted to sort of flag this for folks, this particular piece from you, is log cabin Republicans saying that, Trump is the greatest president for LGBTQ rights, and they're citing gay marriage as one of the pieces of evidence of why he's so amazing, which I'm still vastly confused as to why. I'm like, what did he have to do with gay marriage at all besides hosting one at Mar-a-Lago? But there are all these Republicans at various levels that are trying to get it overturned, including Supreme Court justices who are asking for that case to overturn it.
Right.
Yes, Justice Clarence Thomas has been very solicitous of efforts to overturn the marriage cases. It was Burfell and Windsor versus United States in 2013. In terms of whether that's going to actually happen, I think that's a more difficult question. I think that, when you look at the fact that the executive branch has signed the Respect for Marriage Act, Congress passed that legislatively, so it's on much sturdier footing than abortion, for example, was, which was only protected by Supreme Court precedent, not by statute, not by any executive action. So it's going to be a heavier lift, and I don't know that there's much of a political will to do that during this term. Never say never. I don't want to get ahead of myself and say that won't happen because, I've been wrong before. I've been surprised before. But we'll see. I think you're right there. Like when you look at the log cabin Republicans, and I know this group pretty well. I think that they are really eager to try to separate gender minorities from sexual minorities and to throw basically the trans community under the bus.
Which is, at this point, don't even understand how that would be effectuated. But that's actually a really interesting segue into what I want to talk about, your interview with Danielle Conley, who's a partner at Latham & Watkins. We do have to fit in a break here. We'll come back with White House correspondent for the Washington Blade, Christopher Kane. Keep it tuned here to The Gaily Show. And be sure to follow us on Blue Sky. We're at thegailishow.org on Blue Sky. If you go to shoprainbowrd.com, you will find an amazing variety of adult novelties, literally thousands of items that you can peruse in the privacy of your home and have shipped to your door. Plus, in the store, you can find swimwear, casual wear, underwear, everywhere. Rainbow Road is located at 109 West Grand Street near Loring Park. Gift cards are available for the hard to shop for. Go to shoprainbowrd.com.
Progressive change doesn't just happen. It takes dedication and a lot of hard work. 25 years ago, the Data Bank pioneered a new generation of software tools for progressive organizations here in Minnesota. Since then, thousands of organizations have used the Data Bank to create progressive change. Today, the Data Bank continues to help progressive organizations like AM 950. To have the Data Bank help your organization build capacity and create more change, text CHANGE to 612-540-0500 or go to thedatabank.com. The Data Bank, a quarter century of dedication and hard work for progressive organizations.
Turn to Auto Technical with your vehicle donation. Even though Auto Technical is a small nonprofit, we have helped more families with transportation than any organization in Minnesota. Since '94, we have reconditioned donated vehicles so they have a higher tax benefit. Call Richard at 612-919-5526. 612-919-5526 or autotech.org.
Reading can help manage stress and anxiety during these chaotic Trump years. If you're craving something lighter, check out Next Chapter Booksellers' new fiction tables. Explore their collection of Japanese and Korean healing fiction. They're cozy, whimsical stories filled with magical cats, quaint cafes, and more. Or if you're in the mood for something more intense, check out their upsetting shelf, filled with the strangest and most surreal novels you'll find anywhere. So have Next Chapter Booksellers help you keep your sanity over the next 4 years. More at nextchapterbooksellers.com.
Activism in the 21st century takes many forms. For Minnesota Chippewa artist Rory Wake 'em Up, it's Funktivism. He uses humor, satire, and regalia to challenge social and environmental injustice. Smart Wars is Wake 'em Up's latest solo exhibition. It's a bold mix of Indigenous heritage with modern commentary. Through his multimedia art, Wake 'em Up challenges perceptions and sparks conversations about Native resilience, climate action, and truth-telling. See Smart Wars at All My Relations Arts in Minneapolis, February 27th through April 5th. Details at allmyrelationsarts.org.
Real facts, real opinions, real talk. The Tech Mobility Show is Minnesota's program for news, information, and perspective at the intersection of mobility and technology. I'm Ken Chester, your host. I delve into the current mobility and technology trends and topics that impact you. Things are changing fast, and I cover these topics in a way that's easy to understand. By tuning into the Tech Mobility Show, you can stay informed about the latest happenings with self-driving vehicles, electric airplanes, and more. That's the Tech Mobility Show, heard every Saturday from 9 to 10 p.m. on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Welcome back to the Gaily Show. Jim and I are here with Christopher Kane, White House Correspondent for the Washington Blade. Chris, you had some really interesting reporting. You had an in-depth conversation with Danielle Conley in a recent piece, who is a partner at Latham & Watkins and leads the firm's anti-discrimination and civil rights practice. It was a really in-depth piece, and I obviously really recommend to folks to go to the Washington Blade's website and check it out. What were you discovering as you were talking to Danielle?
Well, thank you so much, Sean. I'm really proud of the piece. So to back up a little bit, my interest in covering this has to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and practices in the private sector. So this is something that President Trump targeted with one of his executive orders shortly after coming into office. But I actually wanted to back up a little bit because over the past year, we've seen a slew of headlines in which major companies have announced changes to their DEI policies and in most cases backing away from them. Mm-hmm. And so I was trying to figure out what's going on kind of within the business community, as well as from a legal perspective, how the companies are being counseled about their relative legal risk of their policies and practices. And essentially, to boil it down, what I'm hearing from Danielle Conley, who again advises these companies as a partner at Latham & Watkins, is that first of all, there's a lot of uncertainty with respect to the language in the executive order describing what constitutes DEI. So it could be something that we would traditionally understand as falling within DEI would be like hiring practices that are designed to for a company to have senior ranking people that are of diverse backgrounds, women, people of color, and so on. Less traditionally understood as part of DEI is things like external facing things like corporate giving, donations to political causes, sponsorship of things like pride parades, things like that. So I was trying to kind of drill down with her and figure out where these legal risks are that the companies are facing. And like the long story short is that it is so case specific and fact specific that it's really hard to paint with a broad brush and say like where exactly the legal lines are. So as a result, companies are really struggling because if they overcorrect and withdraw all of their DEI related policies, they're putting themselves in legal jeopardy and at risk of anti-discrimination lawsuits. Mm-hmm. So it really is kind of like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
That was the part that I was, and I'm saying this as a former like chief diversity officer, and I'm really happy I don't have to advise folks on this right now, because it was coming down to being something so fact specific, but having worked with executives and folks who want to have a very clear cut, this is the policy for my department, for my division, and here's what I can go for, having that level of, maybe this, maybe not, was just so frustrating for people that it sometimes would just automatically lead to wholesale, let's just get rid of stuff all together and deal with the chips as they fall.
I can imagine it's got to be so difficult to be a private company right now operating in this environment, especially for companies that are in sectors like big tech, where you just know that you're under the microscope no matter what. So this is really tricky. It's interesting. Like companies, it'll be interesting to see what companies do in response to this, and especially as we get more clarity on what enforcement's going to look like, to see the trends that the corporate America moves in. And one thing I wanted to add to, which I didn't have a chance to really cover in my story, is that companies understand that DEI policies are good for business. It's good for the bottom line. And so in a lot of cases, if you're asking companies to back away from their DEI policies, you're asking them to knowingly do something that they know is going to hurt their bottom line.
Yeah, there has always been actually a very good economic argument, whether you're in a nonprofit, higher education, or in a Fortune 500 company, for diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's always been there once we got them on board to it, or recognizing that. It seemed like as I was reading through the LGBTQ section when you were asking Danielle about those specific areas. On the one hand, I was like still fact specific, and on the other hand, I'm like, it feels like all LGBTQ stuff is going to ultimately be on the chopping block, whether it's corporate giving, employee resource groups, because this idea of teasing out gender identity from a larger LGBTQ, like employee resource group, for instance, is going to be impossible.
Yes, although I should add as a caveat that we don't really know what enforcement is going to look like. And so President Trump brought this up last night during his speech to the joint session. He talked about the DEI stuff, and he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it was something like, companies are no longer going to make decisions based on race and gender, but rather instead are going to make decisions based on merit. Now, making decisions like hiring and promotion based exclusively on race, things like quotas, those are already things that companies understand to be illegal. So I think in most cases, companies that are well advised are not doing those kinds of things. But if that continues to be, if that's the focus then of enforcement by the Trump administration, then I think companies will probably be safe. But it remains to be seen how far they stray from that traditional enforcement mechanism.
I don't want to make you speculate here. What was coming up for me was the vagueness almost feels intentional, so they can weaponize DOJ to go after companies or CEOs that they don't feel are being sufficiently deferential to the administration. But that was my take on it.
I think, John, I think that's a fair reading. I really do. I think that, in the absence of clarity, what you often get is a chilling effect. So companies will often comply in advance. And I think that's something that we need to take very seriously.
Well, as folks constantly tell me, we could listen to you all day long, and I could talk to you all day long. So thank you for joining us here again today. Folks, we are putting a link in our show notes on our website and on our Blue Sky, where you can read all of Christopher's reporting in real time. That is all for us today. Stay tuned for the Matt McNeil Show coming up next. After that will be Native Roots Radio. In the meantime, keep it queer, America.
End-of-life decisions are not easy to make. Hi, I'm Mary T. of Mary T. Hospice Care. It's important to make sure that